Hello everybody, today I'm here to talk about Give Yourself Goosebumps, Special Edition number 8, Trick or Trap. This is one of the last books in the Give Yourself Goosebumps series, and this is also the rarest book in the series. This one goes for insane prices online, and I'm just going to be upfront and say that this book is a bit of a disappointment. But I'll get into why exactly before I just start jumping in and talking about all the negatives I have with this book. So, in Trick or Trapped, it's Halloween and you're going trick-or-treating, and there's this kid named Nathan who tells you about this place called Sunshine Court. And in Sunshine Court, there are 5 colored houses. There's a yellow, green, blue house, so on. And then there is also this giant white mansion that sits up on this hill behind these colored houses. And he shows you all of the candy he's collected from these different houses and tells you that you should go trick-or-treating there. You're supposed to meet up with your friends. But after you see all the candy that Nathan has collected, you decide you want to go trick-or-treat in this little court and visit all these different houses. And then from there, you basically get to pick which house you want to go to. There's 5 to choose from. And you can get through these various houses where you'll encounter different situations, different things will happen. And then you can go up and go trick-or-treating at this giant white mansion. So basically what happens is there are different scenarios in each of these houses that you will encounter. One of them, you stumble upon a costume party, and the costumes might not be costumes after all. There might be actual monsters in this house, and you have to try to figure out how to escape. In another house, you can encounter your own family, but they're all acting very strangely. They're being super nice to you, and you suspect that they are aliens or something along those lines, posing as your family. You know that they're not your real parents. And then there's another house you can go into, one of the colored houses, where there's a mad scientist with a pet gorilla, and he tries to capture you to perform experiments on you or something of that sort. And there's some pretty bizarre and creepy scenes that take place in that house. So yeah, all these just different really random not completely random. Some of them do feel random. There's just a lot of really bizarre scenarios that take place in these houses. And they're all very different, very, very out there. There's some pretty wild ideas in this book. And then there's the White Mansion, which is supposed to be the final house you can go to. And in this giant white mansion, it turns out that the kid Nathan actually lives there, and he's sort of like a mad scientist himself, kind of. And he creates this creature called the Thing, which I assume is supposed to be this creature on the front here. And he's described a little bit differently in the book than what you see on the cover. But essentially, this is kind of what he looks like, I guess. And basically what happens is he says that this creature likes to play hide and seek, and he sets him free, sets him loose. He's locked up in a cage, and he tells you that you have an hour to play hide and seek with him. And if you can evade this creature for an hour, then you'll basically get all of the candy you could ever want, and Nathan will let you go free. However, if this creature catches you, he's basically going to kill you. So you have to play a game of hide and seek with this creature in this giant mansion, and you have to just go to these different rooms and try to figure out how to hide, how to stay alive for that period of time. And yeah, that's basically the story to this one, Trick or Trapped. And on paper, it sounds pretty cool, right? At least I think so. I'll just kind of start off with the positives of this book, and that is the concept of this is just really, really cool. I love the idea of trick-or-treating, going trick-or-treating and visiting all these different houses. And each of these houses presents a very, very different idea. Some of it is really far-fetched and out there. For example, there's one house you can go into and it sort of transports you to it doesn't really say specifically where. I'm guessing somewhere like the Arctic or the Antarctic, because there's lots of snow and ice everywhere, and there's even a polar bear. So yeah, there's just a lot of these really crazy ideas and different things that can happen in these various houses. And a lot of it does it really leans into the humor and the silliness a lot more. It's not really all that scary. But for the most part, I was kind of on board with just how wild and crazy it was, because there's just a lot of variety to it. And I kind of liked it. I kind of liked some of these wild ideas and just some of the stuff that these different houses presented. I was on board with it for the most part. And then just the concept alone of having to go through these different houses, sort of survive each one, figure out how to escape, and then move on to this giant white mansion where you're facing up against this creature, and then you have to like survive against him chasing you essentially, and along the way collecting different treats and items and trick or treat candy, that kind of thing. So yeah, this one has an awesome concept. Really, really love the idea for this book. And unfortunately, that's really my main positive with it. um, so let's just move on and talk about what this book does wrong. The main thing that's wrong with this book is the gameplay aspect to it, or the game function. For those of you who don't know or maybe haven't read many of these GYG books, this is a special edition, and the special edition books are essentially have more of a focus on like an objective, a goal. There's more gameplay to them, which means there's like inventory keeping, item collecting, that kind of thing. For example, it even tells you in this book to grab like a piece of pen and paper and write down which items you have. There will be situations in the book where you encounter um, different like items and you can choose to collect them or pick them up. And then later in the book, you'll encounter a choice where you'll get to use these items to help you out of sticky situations, that kind of thing. And there is some of that in some of the earlier GYG books, but not really as much as in these special editions. These special editions really have more of a focus on like this gameplay aspect. It's more supposed to be more challenging, more immersive, that kind of thing. And there's also, I believe anyway, again, I have to go back and reread these other special editions, but from what I remember, there's only supposed to be one good ending in these, which presents more of a challenge, and you're trying to like achieve that like one true ending, and you have to do so by solving puzzles, collecting the right items, that kind of thing. And where this book really, really falters is the gameplay aspect to this book is completely broken. Um, it's it's really frustrating. I mentioned right up front that this book was disappointing, and this is definitely the book's weakest point. Is that the gameplay aspect is just, it's so broken. So I'll give you an example. I'll give you a direct example. There's one house you can go into, one of the colored houses, and at the start you have the option to take one of three items with you when you go into this house. They're like different pieces of candy. And it should be set up to where you have to pick the right one to get you through the house. And then later on in the house, there are choices presented to you. You have to go down a certain path depending on which item or which piece of candy you chose. But the way it's set up is that it really doesn't matter which one you choose. There is a choice you can make dependent upon each piece of candy. So, and two of them, I think, lead you out of the house, and then one. So, I mean, I guess there is a small chance that you could pick the wrong one, but two of them will lead you right out of the house. So it kind of defeats like the challenging aspect of it. And there are other examples in here where it starts to set up something where you're like collecting certain items, but it's really, really underutilized because then you don't even get to use them that much. There's like one house where you can actually use these items that you collect, and it's just makes it feel pointless. It's like, why are you even bothering with that or even worrying about it? And it made it hard to play this book, honestly. And by that I mean reading through it and like following the instructions exactly. If you collect a certain item, having that item later on when it presents you that choice instead of cheating. And I did play it honestly for like the first couple of read throughs, but after that, because of how frustrating this book was and how difficult it makes to play it honestly with the way it's set up, I just kind of gave up and just read through it and explored all the different endings, because the gameplay, the game function to this is just so broken. It makes no sense. And then how it also should be set up, and how it's kind of implied at first, I guess it doesn't clearly state, but how it should be set up with the different colored houses in the beginning is that you have to go through each one and survive each house, collect various items in each one, etc., before you can move on to the White Mansion. Now, there are some houses that are sort of linked together. For example, you can go through the yellow house, and then at the end, it will either move you to another house, or you'll have a choice of picking between, do you want to go to the blue house next or the red house next? But most of these houses, once you escape them, it will just either send you or give you an option to go straight to the White Mansion, which is like the final house where the final showdown takes place. So that really just takes a lot of the fun out of it, because you can reach the final house and get to the like good ending literally within like 3 to 4 choices. And it just takes all of the challenge out of it, which these special editions are supposed to be known for, is the more gameplay, more challenge oriented aspects. And yeah, you can literally reach the main true good ending in this book. Like, I'm pretty sure it was like within 3 to 4 choices. And it's just, what what's even the point in that? And the other negative that I have with this is that there are too many good endings. Going along with this kind of whole gameplay function just being a mess in this book, is that there's too many. There's like half the endings in this book are good, which is not how it's supposed to be. Most Give Yourself Goosebumps books have about one good ending per story arc. Of course, with these special editions, it's just one story arc for this entire book. It's not split up into different arcs. Of course, you can go to the different houses. Each house has something vastly different going on in it, but the entire story is kind of revolving around this central plot of you trick-or-treating. And yeah, and there's good endings to be found all throughout this book. I think even a couple of the colored houses will send you to a good ending where you survive and go back out trick-or-treating with your friends or whatever before you even get to the White Mansion. And it's just, it felt like really lazily written. The more that I think about this now, this almost feels like a rough draft. This does not feel like a finished product. I'm wondering if maybe whoever wrote this, Stein, ghostwriter, whatever, I have a feeling this one was ghostwritten. I have a feeling that the deadline was coming up. They had an awesome idea for this book, and this did have the potential, don't get me wrong. This could have been one of the all-time great GYGs, but the deadline was approaching. They were running out of time, and they just kind of hurry up and slap something together, finished and wrote all the endings, and sent it into Scholastic. That's what it feels like to me. This really reads like a rough draft. So yeah, that's why this book is so disappointing. That's really my main negative I have with this book, is the gameplay aspect. I know I'm repeating myself a little bit here now, but it was just a complete mess. And it made for a very disappointing, very frustrating experience. And the reason it's so disappointing is because of how good the concept was. It starts out really strong. I love the ideas here. I love all of the craziness and wildness too. And you get with these different houses, and how each one offers a nice variety. There's something completely different going on in each one, even though it's not necessarily all that scary, and some of what happens is a bit outlandish. I was still enjoying it for the most part, but a lot of the ideas too are a bit half-baked, I will admit. A lot of these houses you don't really spend that much time in. Some of them you only get to make like maybe 2 choices in the greenhouse, for example, and then you're out of it and you're back visiting another house or going up to the White Mansion. I feel like the most time is probably spent running away from this creature in the White Mansion, running into various rooms, and then and even that aspect in the White Mansion, running away from this creature, is really a mess, because I feel like that should be more of a challenge than it is, and you have to go through each of these rooms and survive each one. But instead, there's like a good ending for each one. I think only a couple of them are even connected to where you can move to a room from room in this house. And it's just, it's such a mess, guys. I don't know what else to say about it. So yeah, I remember loving this book when I was a kid. And unfortunately, I see now that it is just, it's kind of a disaster. It's not the worst Give Yourself Goosebumps book that I've read. It does have some potential. It has some good things going for it. Again, I had some fun with just how wild and ridiculous some of the events are in the houses. There's the one house, colored house, I forget which one, that has like the mad scientist in it and the gorilla. And there's one scene in there where he has like a collection of like talking heads, and that was kind of creepy. I kind of like that. There was one that even had like a Santa Claus in it, which I kind of like that too. It was really bizarre, but I kind of liked it just because of how, I don't know, just bizarre it was, I guess. That was kind of cool. But yeah, I don't know. It's a shame that being one of the last and like one of the rarest books in the series was just so poorly executed. This really had the potential to be one of the all-time great GYGs, in my opinion, but it just ends up being a letdown. And again, it's not the worst that I've read. There's still a little bit of fun to be had here, which is why I'm not going to give it a 1 out of 5 stars. I think I'm going to settle on a 2 out of 5 stars with this book. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Trick or Trapped. And I don't know if I explored every single ending in this book, every single path. I think I might have missed a couple. Originally, when I started rereading through this series, I planned on reading every single book, getting every single ending possible, exploring them thoroughly. But I'm getting to the point where I'm kind of losing the patience to do that. On books that I'm rating below 3 out of 5 stars, books that I'm kind of meh on, or that I can't get into at all, I'm going to at least explore, for the most part, explore both story arcs, get most of the endings. But if I miss a few, it's not the end of the world. I'm not going to sit there and try to get every single path, every single ending, because if it's a book I don't care about that much, I just feel like I don't want to waste my time on it. And this one kind of falls into that category. I think there might have been a couple endings I missed. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm not going to go back and try to get everything, because this one was just kind of meh. So yeah, whenever I get around to finally doing my ranking, I suspect this will be definitely in the bottom. I don't know, bottom 5, bottom 10 maybe, I'm not sure yet. Definitely bottom 10 at least. This is probably the worst special edition. I have to read the other ones yet. I hope none of the other special editions are worse than this one. But again, it had the potential. There's still some fun to be had here. It just was a bit of a letdown with how poorly executed this idea was. So yeah, that's Trick or Trapped. What's your thoughts on this one? If you guys have read it yet, let me know down in the comments. And that's all I have for today, guys. So thanks for watching.